All right, what's poppin', everybody? This is the Satrix Money School podcast, where we turn complex money ideas into clear, practical lessons that you guys could utilize on a daily basis. I'm your host. My name is Karabo. And each episode, I'll be sitting down with South Africans who have walked the talk, entrepreneurs, investors, and as well as creators who will be sharing their real stories on their money decisions, looking into what worked, what didn't work, but also ultimately what they would have done differently. All right, so in today's episode, we're going to be speaking about the power of compound interest. I'm going to be joined in studio by Miss Maya Fischer-French. First and foremost, give a huge shout out to the sponsors. Satrix, own the market. They're all about making investments smart and simple. And they also understand the complexities of investing, hence why they strive to make the platform easy and seamless for you guys. All right, so up next, I'll be joined in studio by Miss Maya Fischer-French. But also, I'm joined in studio by Maya Fischer-French. We're going to be speaking about the power of compound interest. Now, Maya Fischer-French, she is a personal financial journalist, an author, and the founder of Maya on Money. Maya, how are you, first and foremost?
I'm very, very good today.
Good to have you in studio. This is your first time here, right, with us. First and foremost, when we speak about financial literacy, what first comes to mind?
Financial literacy is knowing how to manage the most important thing in your life, which is money. That's actually what financial literacy is, right? And I think so few people actually know how money works in this world of ours, of finance and numbers. And it's just like, how do I do these calculations? How do I make the most from my money? And I think that's financial literacy.
I like that. And based on your journey, you've taught a lot of South Africans on the power of money. I've shared this conversation with a lot of people who come into the studio, and they speak about, as people of color, we grew in a space where it wasn't easy from our parents to talk about money, but now we are in a space where we need to learn about savings and budgeting. With your line of work, why was that important for you to literally just teach about money?
It's so interesting talking about what happens at home. And I actually we didn't talk about money at home. And my father died when I was 16 and left us financially destitute. My mother didn't know. Nobody knew. And I still remember, I think for me, that was the moment I realized that when a woman doesn't know what's going on in the household, she's in big trouble. And I think that must have planted a seed a long time ago. But, if I move fast forward, I got, and people come to me and they say, oh, but I know nothing about money or investing. Well, how? How would you? I got my first job at Investec Private Bank. I arrived there. I didn't even know what a unit trust was. I didn't know a single term. I knew nothing. And I think if I hadn't have had that opportunity, and I'd chosen the other job I was offered was in advertising. And if I'd been taking the advertising job, I wouldn't have financial literacy. I was lucky to have gone into an environment where I was able to learn. So I think that's also part of the challenge is if you're not picking it up at home, and then where? If not at home, where?
Exactly.
And that is, it's huge. And we are seeing this through and through in all the financial decisions people make because they don't actually have access to the information, but the world's changing. I mean, you've got so many things like this podcast, social media, access YouTube, where people are able to educate themselves.
Why do you think, Maya, based on your awesome journey, obviously you taught yourself, based on the opportunity that you had, right? But why do you think it's important for us to understand, the dynamics of money and what you do with it?
Because money's power, whether we like it or not. We are not in a world where money means nothing. Money means putting food on the table. Money means helping the next generation through education. Money means putting a roof over our heads. I'm not talking about money as having yachts or whatever. I'm talking about money as just meeting our basic needs. And we need to know how to harness that.
I like that.
And if we don't, I always think about money as in these Disney movies, there's always the goodie and the baddie, right? And money can be a force for evil and a force for good. And if we can harness it as a force for good and build wealth and generosity and intergenerational legacy, it's amazing. Of course, it can also lead us down the path of debt and credit and all of those things. So let's not pretend that money's not important.
Very true. I think, the most important thing is, as you're saying about money, is understanding, first and foremost, why you have it, but also in the line of whatever it is that you're doing, your passion, your purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing, which will allow you to make clear decisions based on what you have. Maya, we speak about your book, right? Maya on Money. First and foremost, let's speak about your journey growing up. Did you always know that you're going to be this individual?
No. You know, I went to university and I was going to study law. I wasn't going to go into finance at all. I knew nothing. I didn't even study economics or accounting at school. And I got some very good advice from a family friend who said, you know what, use the opportunity at university to expand your mind a little bit. Take subjects outside of just, you know, law. And I arrived at university and I discovered this subject called economics. And I thought, now that's interesting. That sounds like something I should learn about.
Like that.
So I did. I majored in English and economics, and in doing this, I suddenly realized that law wasn't for me. That I really was enjoying this economic stuff. So suddenly this world opened up for me. And as I said, I finished university, and I had 2 job offers. One was advertising. And one was Investec Bank. So, you know, I could have gone either way. And at the end of the day, I just liked the people who interviewed me at Investec, and I thought advertising may be full of drugs. I don't know, is it? And I just made the biggest, most random decision of my life based on that amount of information. So no, I didn't expect myself to be here.
You know, based on your story, I like the fact that there was a little bit of a pivot, right? And, you know, sometimes, you know, as an entrepreneur or somebody, you know, finding themselves in life, you know, they probably feel like if I pivot, I failed, but not knowing the next opportunity or something else that may spark, you know, a particular need, you know, for what they have actually been purposed for. Did you find it a bit intimidating when you said, I don't want to be in law, I want to pursue economics? That decision, did you have anybody to guide you in that decision? Or was it just
I was very strictly informed by a friend of my mother's that I was making the biggest mistake of my life, because economics was a useless subject, and best I either do a BCom or law and pull myself together. And I still would like to go back to him. I think he's probably not alive anymore, which is a pity, because I want to go back to him saying, do you know why I was offered that job at Investec? Because they said they'd never seen a combination of English and economics before. It was an unusual combination. So sometimes your unusualness, the interest, the thing that drives you, the passion, is what makes you unique. And it's my uniqueness that got me that job.
Wow, I like that. Your uniqueness, my uniqueness. Maya, you are extraordinary in teaching South Africans about money, right? But let's speak about what first sparked your, you know, initial interest in financial education.
I think it really came about when, so after Investec, I joined a stockbroking firm. And I was actually involved in setting up the trading desk for them, and people were buying shares. Now I'm giving you my age, but this was the late 90s, when there was a stock market, where it was the dot-com boom was happening. And people were talking about their shares and all of this, but then I started to realize that they didn't talk about their credit card debt. They didn't talk about the fact they didn't have wills. We had a client who actually committed suicide because he didn't have enough money for retirement. We knew somebody who didn't tell his wife for 6 months that he'd been retrenched. And I started to realize that what we talk around the braai is often very different from reality. And I started to see that there was a need for really proper financial education. And I actually left stockbroking to have, when I had my son, the hours, and I wanted a little bit more flexibility. And then I started writing for a newspaper. In fact, I started a blog for MoneyWeb, and then I joined a newspaper, and I realized that I could use all this information I had, and I could educate people. And I realized that that was actually my calling. And I do have to tell you something. Many years earlier, I had done an aptitude test. And 2 things had come up. One was that I must be a journalist. That was when I was 19, I think. And I was like, journalism? No, man, that's like the Star newspaper chasing ambulances or something. It wasn't interesting to me. But of course, it's the investigative side, it's the educational side. And then the other thing that I was told was that I could be a union leader because I have a passion for championing other people's causes. So I do wonder if we don't carry these characteristics and somewhere along the line they find they're out. And I think for me it is championing causes, championing other people's causes, helping people. You know, that's just who I am. And I think financial education gave me that outlet.
I like that. And before we get into the next question, let's speak a little bit about that. You know, it speaks a lot about, you know, self and discipline, because you can't feed others if, you know, you haven't put that work in yourself. How did you manage that? Because we speak a lot about your educational route, but where did the self come in, where you poured into yourself, not just from the educational side?
So I think one of the things I just do want to mention, you know, people, you know, they look and say, oh, you always have understood money. I have made massive money mistakes. And I think that's a very important part of the life lesson. And in fact, I think a lot of my financial education work has come out of my own experiences of, you know, both my husband and I losing our jobs, child born, new house, all of those, not budgeting, getting into debt, getting out of debt. I've done all of those things. So I think a lot of that is also life lessons. But then I do think you do, and it's an important point, pouring into yourself. And you do need to find a quiet space and a quiet mind in this crazy world sometimes. And I do deal, as a journalist, there's two parts to what I do. One is financial education, but the other is I challenge the industry and I write about stuff, right? Yeah. And that can often bring a lot of conflict because people get very angry with me and they get very upset when I reveal what they're up to.
Honesty is not always needed.
So I think also sometimes I also do have to do a little bit of meditation and mindfulness work. I do have to admit to keep grounded.
Beautiful. No, I mean that's what's needed because we've spoken a lot with individuals on the platform is the importance of discipline and self. There was an individual who came on the platform. He spoke about he first his previous business he misused R1 million, and he had old scars and old wounds where he patched it, obviously, by just living a lavish life. And his business went downhills. So he had to go to therapy, he had to understand his why and the business why that made him then, pick himself up. So the importance of just understanding who you are and why you do what you do.
Well, that is so key when it comes to money. Money is really one of those things, or we externalize if we're having a lot of pain, and that's where consumption comes. The brand, wearing brands, spending more money than you have on a car is often a sign of internal pain. So, I mean, we know if you look at the Stoics or anybody, the Buddhists or anything like that, they say material things are not who you are.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, a lot of that has to be part of that work that you need to do.
I like that. And you're also teaching that?
Oh, absolutely. Beautiful. I mean, that is your money psychology. In fact, whenever we're doing any work, I'd run something called, we did Money Makeover, and now it's the Money Boot Camp. The first thing we do is get people to do a money questionnaire about their emotional state.
Oh, man.
What did money mean to you growing up? Do you know what aha moments that gives you? It's like, that explains so many things. So I would say to people, go back to your childhood and think about money memories. What did you do with your money? How was money dealt with in the family? Are those triggers for you? And also, does money make you anxious? And when you have to open a bill, nowadays you download it on the email, but when you get a bill, does it make you anxious? These things, just understanding the way we react to money, very powerful.
I was actually speaking to one friend of mine just recently right now is, when that money first hits your account, you just have that impulsiveness just to do something. Yeah. You don't want to wait 2 days to just relax, let your mind settle. Then you're able to be in a space where you know what's important, what's not important.
Exactly. We move from the hot state to the cold state. So the hot state's a very dangerous state to be in. I just want to give you a tip because of course nowadays we do a lot of online shopping, right? And this is causing havoc because we can just push a button and the box arrives. So a great thing to do, and I actually got this tip from somebody else she was on a budget and she was trying to manage her money. So what she would do, she was a big online shopper. She would put it in the basket, and she wouldn't check it out. And she would go back the next day and say, "Oh, do I still like it? Oh, actually not. You know what? I prefer that item." She'd delete that, put another one in, and she got her window shopping and her dopamine high. By the way, we get a dopamine high from shopping. But we don't get the dopamine high from owning it. We get it from the anticipation of ownership. So the minute we own it, our dopamine levels actually drop. So you get the box at the door, right? And that excitement is the dopamine high. And then you open it and you've got it and the dopamine starts to drop, which is why we go back into the cycle again. And if you can start to understand the way your mind works, then you can start to trick it a little bit.
Beautiful. Listen, I've learned something. All right, so Maya, we're going to be speaking about the power of compound interest, right? So in layman's term, in a clear, plain context, right, what is compound interest to someone who's never invested before?
Do you remember that advert where it said, your money babies are making babies, right? So it's this thing where, I suppose if you had to think about it, if you had a couple and they had 2 children and those 2 children had 2 children and you get this sort of what we call an exponential effect, right? So you just keeps doubling and doubling and doubling and doubling as you're going along. So that's actually what's happening with money. But what is happening is that you're investing it it's earning, I'm going to use interest as a simple term. It's earning interest, and then that interest starts to earn interest, starts to earn interest. But the biggest thing about compounding that people don't understand is time. It doesn't happen overnight. It is literally a time curve. So any graph you see around compounding looks like this, and then it suddenly spikes up. But you know how few people can wait till then? And that's the problem.
I think I've also learned on this platform, right, that investing is all about patience and time. You invest for the future, right?
Absolutely.
But now, can you just share, speaking on time, can you just share some of your, experiences on how time has changed the investment outcomes? So let's say, for example, from 25 versus to 35.
Huge difference. It's actually, this makes every 35-year-old depressed. So if, for example, at the age of 25, you were a smart cookie and you said, I'm going to put 10% of my salary away every single month until the age of 65. The person who waited 10 years, because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to first enjoy life. I'm going to pay off some debts. I'm just going to, because I've got time. Starts at 35. At the age of 65, the 25-year-old will have 40% more, 40% more than the one who started at 35. So these are very, very big numbers. It's
always good to start early.
You've got to start early, or you've got to invest more. So probably if you're starting at 35, instead of putting away 10%, you'll now have to be putting away 16 or 17%. So the longer you wait, the more money you have to be investing. So I think the best gift you can give yourself is to start, even if it's a small amount, just start as early as possible.
Yeah, and also, in your line of work, why do you think, oftentimes people underestimate, compounding when they're setting out their financial goals?
Because it's not instant. And we were in a world of instant gratification, right? And I see so many people saying, oh, but I put my money in, it's been in for 2 years, and it's, and I'll give you a very good example. So if you have 100,000 Rand, okay, which is a lot of, this is what happens generally speaking, is you get to the age of 30, you've accumulated some of your pension fund, it's about 100,000, you change jobs. 100,000 Rand, if I'm getting a 10% return on that, that's 10,000 Rand a year. That doesn't sound exciting. So let me rather take the money out and pay off my car or pay off debts or something like that. But that R1 million invested, right, at 10% is giving you 100,000 Rand a year. So that you want to start getting to the big numbers, but you're never going to get to the big numbers until if you keep taking the little numbers out. So I think it's that idea that the only way you're going to get the 100,000 to R1 million is to leave it there. And that is when it starts getting exponential, because now every year you're making 100,000, right? Because you've built up the R1 million. So I think it's just, I find that probably the hardest concept to get across to people is the time value of money. And it's because we value things more now than in the future. And no matter how many times you show the numbers, people are just a bit like, yeah, but it would be so nice to have a car now, that sort of thing. So I think it's a huge challenge.
And also, life happens. Let's say, for example, I'm investing, right? I'm trying to leave it for, I don't know, X amount of years, right? But things, rise up, debts, people are calling me, and I'm like, I just need to take this out. That's not really an impulsive decision, but it's like, I just have to close off this gap. That happens a lot, right?
It happens because of the way we think about money. So I think we need to start getting away from this idea that our investments should somehow be a sacrifice of our spending. We almost need to see it as one of the bills. It is a bill that I have to pay. You paying off your mortgage, you can't say, well, I'm not going to pay my mortgage this month. I'm just going, we've got to almost give it that kind of importance in our lives. But one of the things we need to do in terms to protect our long-term wealth is, first of all, have a budget. People get so bored when I say that. Or somebody called it a cash flow plan, which is another way of putting it. Whenever I work with somebody, I have to tell you that in 6 months we change their lives once they start tracking their money. I can tell you now, if you start and you wrote down for the next month what you spend, you will go, I didn't know. And the important thing is it'll be on things that you don't actually value. So once people start to do that work, they start to realize there's a lot of other things they could cut out. And they don't have to tap into their investments. And I think it's getting that mindset right. And the other thing is please, I had a young woman now coming to me saying, I've just started work, what should I do? Emergency fund. Because if you have that emergency fund, so emergency fund, you don't get yourself over indebted, you won't ever have to touch the long-term investments. But if you don't have that liquidity and that emergency fund, then yes, life happens and you're having to pull out the long-term investments and destroying the opportunity for compound wealth. So I think it's all of those things. We need to start thinking differently about investments just as being secondary. They should be primary. They should be the non-negotiable.
I like that. I like that. And you've often alluded to, paying yourself first. How does that habit tie into the principle of compounding?
Exactly that point, right? So you've got to think that the first bill that I pay is my investments, myself, effectively. That's the first bill, before anything else. So if you decide that you want to buy a car, let's say, and you do your budget, which you must always do a budget before you buy a car, that's in the budget. It's not like, well, you know what, I just won't put money away for my investments for 3 months. Just think about it as the most important bill that you have to pay, because the person who you're paying that bill for is going to come. Is there going to come a time when you want to have wealth and you want to have choices? So yeah, that's the way I think of it, is it's non-negotiable.
And also, in your line of work, Maya, what are the most common mistakes you've seen people, make when they're trying to build long-term wealth through compounding?
I think it's giving up too easily. I think that's probably it, expecting returns too quickly. So that's probably the biggest mistake I make, is that people get frustrated, they get bored, they think, oh, they look for the quick fix. We're not going to go into crypto now, but a lot of people say to me, yes, but if I'd invested in Bitcoin, whatever, I must just tell you, I think Capitec has outperformed Bitcoin, just by the way, over the last 5 or so years. So I think, first of all, it's just trying to look for the quick fix instead of understanding that you need to do long-term, patient, the tortoise in the hare, just keeping going wins the race. I think they invest in the wrong assets. So a lot of people sit in bank accounts and not invested, which is why we're sitting on the Satrix show, right? Because bank accounts are not going to keep up with inflation. You need something that can grow and outpace inflation out of bank accounts. So I think those are two probably the most common mistakes.
And of course, we're in a time where there's rising costs, inflation, as you're speaking about. And then how can now investors prepare for such? For
inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation is very important to understand. And I always say to people, if you look, I think a Wimpy breakfast. Wimpy is the one thing that you can, because they've got the same food item.
No, but Wimpy's not the best. Yes.
Well, the Wimpy farmhouse breakfast in 1983 was R2.80. Right. Okay, I think it's 70 Rand now. That's inflation. So I always say to people, you're not putting money away to buy just one Wimpy breakfast. You're wanting to buy more than one Wimpy breakfast. So the only way we can do that is to outpace inflation. So it's very important that we're investing in things that outpace inflation. And shares, exchange-traded funds, all of those things are things that can outpace inflation. And that's why we can't afford to sit in cash.
And also now, when we speak about, consistency versus small amounts, right? How does now a small investment monthly help somebody based on that?
Small investments, I'm going to tell you a very real story. My son was 2 years old when I opened Satrix Top 40. Satrix Top 40 had just launched, and I was working at a stockbroking firm, so I knew the value of investing. I think I started off, I think the minimum was 50 Rand, but I think I started off with 200 Rand. And along the way, I kind of increased as the minimums went up. Now we don't have minimums on Satrix, but in those days they were. But I really wasn't contributing much. And when he turned 11, I was actually writing my first book. And I went to look at his statement. It was worth 100,000 Rand.
Wow.
My son at the age of 11 had 100,000 Rand. All from just a simple debit order, small debit order that kept going off every month. Do not underestimate the power of a small amount done regularly.
Sure, but I think also, we speak about, that patience. Not a lot of us have that, and it's that work that we have to do in ourselves to get into that space. So we just leave the money, but some of us can't do that. But we have to learn.
Yes. So people, I was speaking to a couple, and she was saying that they've been trying to save for a washing machine, but then she keeps spending the money. But then I'd realized that he's a very good saver. So I said, well, maybe he should do the saving. And protect yourself. But it is discipline. And, everyone says, oh, yes, I can't. You know what? Exercise is a discipline. Discipline is what determines success. So just start getting disciplined.
I like that. So, Maya, how do you recommend balancing short-term financial pressures with the need to stay invested over decades, over a long period of time?
Again, I spoke a little bit earlier about knowing where your money's going. So, your short-term financial pressures, there may be, if you're facing short-term pressures on like a daily basis, it does come back to saying, how do I review my lifestyle? What choices can I make? Go review your car insurances or your bank fees, or there's so many of those little things that eat away at our money. So really you want to be tracking that. And I think if again, having the emergency fund, I mean, it's pretty much all of the things that I have spoken about. And again, I think it just comes down to, there is always someone who earns less than you. So how do they manage? It's very simple. So, I can't come out on what I have. I can assure you there's someone who earns less. How are they managing? So it is a little bit of a mindset. And the other thing we mustn't underestimate, and in fact, I was just reading the latest survey from UCT Marketing Institute, where they've tracked graduates over sort of 5 years. And side hustles are becoming huge. And I think that is such a brilliant way. It is hard as a graduate, right? You finish university, now you've got to buy, you've got to find your own home, and you've got all these expenses. If you can find a way to make just a little bit of extra money every month, and you earmark that for investing, that's one way to build wealth.
Beautiful, beautiful. And also, what's your take on compounding beyond money? Like habits, skills, or career growth?
Okay, so habits, Atomic Habits, right? That's the book. And I think small things every day make an enormous difference, absolutely enormous. Even if, and I think also it's small changes, not big changes. If I decide I want to exercise more, get fit, if I decide I'm going to commit myself to an hour-long gym session every day, and I'm going to hit the weights and all of that, I'm going to get fatigued, and I'm going to burn out, and I'm going to get bored. But if I say I'm just going to commit to 30 minutes 3 times a week, and I start with that and I stay disciplined, I can build from there. So I think all of these things with habits is to start with something manageable. Even when I talk about debt, if you are over indebted, I always like to start with the smallest debt that you can pay off quickly, and it's done. And it gives you that psychological win. So I think start instilling small, easy, achievable habits, and over time you'll get there. And I think skills, big one, right? We have to keep upskilling in our careers. So financial skills, commit yourself to reading 1 financial book a year. Or say each month I'm going to learn 1 financial concept. Just make them small, obtainable goals. And I think that's a lot easier than saying, today I'm going to transform my financial life, because you're just going to get overwhelmed.
I like that. And also, I've also learned or heard that, let's say I just bump into, a large amount of money, lump sum of money, or an inheritance. Obviously, they say wait 6 months before you use it, but the first thing you need to do is pay off debt, right? Like that. So, Maya, I want you to look into the camera, right? And just for the viewers that are listening, what's the first step that they need to do for them to make compound interest work for them?
The first thing you need to do is you actually have to be investing, because even 100% return on zero is zero, right? So until you've started and opened that account, and I can highly recommend going onto Satrix, right, onto the website and opening an account and just start putting the money away, and just leave it and let it grow and let it compound. That's what I did for my son. I must tell you, that's what I do for myself.
Wow.
So that is advice that I live. So I would say that that's the best way to start with compounding, is to start.
I like that. Maya, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise. It's always a privilege and a blessing to have individuals like yourself who have, an extraordinary, not just resume, but a way of helping others to set them up for a greater cause. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's a wonderful conversation.
Awesome. That's Miss Maya Fischer-French, right here in studio, speaking about the power of compound interest. I think she said, rather start where you're at. Don't think about you need to have a huge amount of money to start. Start with the little that you have and let it grow, over time. Just like you said, her son at the age of 11 has 100,000 to his name. And I know for sure Ms. Maya's also going to put me into that. I'm going to have a lot of money. All right, awesome. Right next, we're going to be back with Lauren Jacobs from Satrix up next.
In a world where investments were expensive and out of reach for most, Satrix followed the rhythm of its own drumbeat. In the year 2000, Satrix introduced index tracking to South Africa. Since then, we have made investing accessible to everyone Through low fees and no minimum investments, we give all South Africans the chance to own the market. Our range of investment products offer diverse access to strategies and asset classes across local and international markets for any stage of your life. We've kept in tempo with our community, winning the Salter People's Choice Award for the last 7 consecutive years. Our cost-effective and award-winning products offer value to individuals and institutions alike. Satrix has managed index tracking funds for institutional clients since 2000. From ETFs and unit trusts to life pooled and segregated portfolios, to meet the different needs of clients, pension fund members, and organizations. By driving the global cadence of indexation, our bespoke solutions have contributed to Satrix holding the largest market share in the South African ETF industry. And we're expanding our African footprint. At Satrix, indexation is anything but passive. We stand proudly as the drumbeat of possibility. Satrix. Own the market.
All right, awesome. We're joined right now in the studio all the way from Cape Town. I'm joined by Lauren Jacobs. She's with Satrix. I've had here before. This is going to be our third conversation. We're going to be talking about the new area of thinking about retirements or long-term investments, particularly starting early. Lauren, how are you?
I'm good yourself, Karabo. Nice to be back.
I'm good. Always, exciting just to have these conversations that can literally broaden our perspectives, helping us understand, this money journey. Lauren, this is going to be our third conversation. I want to ask you first and foremost, what has been your takeaway or your nuggets, so far?
I think it's really been for me around education and the fact that we have the opportunity here to not only, educate the nation and educate ourselves again, just reminding ourselves what are the steps around saving and investing. So it's been a good opportunity for me also to revise that plan on my side.
Yeah. I like that. It's important, for all of us to educate ourselves, no matter how far we have made it. It's always good to learn something. And we just have to keep learning, unlearning, relearning. And I guess that's just the gist of life. All right, cool. So Lauren, we're going to be talking about this new way of thinking about investment, right? Or long-term, or new way of thinking about retirement or long-term investment, especially, with my generation. We don't want to talk anymore about retirement. We don't want to think that far.
Yeah.
We're all about spending now, living, they call it living frugally right now. So Lauren, when we really talk about retirement right now, it's within our generation or my generation, the term has been outdated, right? Why do you think that is so, and what is your take on that? And also primarily speaking about, the importance on saving for retirement.
So, I mean, before any of our viewers who have tuned in think they're going to tune out because, this is not about grey hair and golf carts. It's just about giving us a chance. And because, give us a chance to explain to you that, younger generations, retirement isn't what it used to be. It's being reimagined, it's being reshaped and redefined. And it all starts with one idea, and that's to start early.
Yes.
And like you said, the question is really, why does retirement feel outdated? Or why does long-term investing feel outdated? Because a lot of generations aren't buying into this old school narrative where you work for 40 years and then you finally relax, and they're really rethinking retirement, and not as in waiting 40 years, but maybe having mini retirements or career breaks or deciding to do some remote work. And it's really about financial freedom. And not at 65, maybe at 35, 45, or whenever life talks to you. Like you said, it's not about waiting to live, it's about living now. And really the mindset shift is around retirement is not the finish line anymore. It's a flexible goalpost. And saving for retirement is really just about building in options for these mini retirements and so on. And it's not just for the pension in the future.
So obviously, as we have stated, when we talk about retirement, it's we think of it as it's for when we are old, it's for the future. But also when we talk about investing, we speak about you're not investing for now, you're investing for the future. So Lauren, if someone is not really thinking of, chasing the traditional retirement route, why then is it important for them to start investing early?
Because of compound interest and because of compounding, because compounding doesn't care when you start as long as you start. Because compound interest, your money grows more money. So the minute you continue to invest and continue to let your money grow, that growth compounds and it gives you the freedom for that future change in your lifestyle or change in your work and mini retirement. And it's really about building financial discipline and confidence and resilience, because if you take that mini retirement, you need to know I still have a backup money to look after myself should I now come back and need to still find a job and so on. So it's really about compounding your growth and your return, and then also creating financial discipline in the way you invest.
Yeah. And also, obviously, we spoke on this platform about using, EFTs. Oh, sorry, ETFs, to help with, to help with side hustles, right? How then can also ETFs support someone in wanting to, start investing early?
So creating a portfolio of ETFs is almost like creating all these different layers, right? Because when you consider this new way of looking at retirement, you want to have some liquidity. So you want to be able to access money quickly. So if you want to go on a short break, you want to have access to some money quite quickly. And ETFs give you that quick access, as well as a few of these ETFs are more liquid and more conservative, so it's focused maybe around capital growth and liquidity. So that would be kind of your base layer. So you want to be able to access it quite quickly and make sure that you're not really losing part of that capital. Then you have a middle layer where you look at more growth ETFs, or for a more medium to long-term view on your investment. So whether that's in like an equity fund, local or offshore, that would be your long-term view part of your portfolio. And then you'd have another layer that says, well, actually, what is my view? Do I invest in ESG? Do I like tech stocks? Is there a theme behind what I want to invest in? So that would be kind of your top layer, giving you a little bit of extra maybe return, and somewhere where you can say, this is me coming through in the portfolio. And this would then support, your intentional living and not just being locked into one path, but really building a foundation that supports your lifestyle, not really restricting it.
Yeah. Speaking about a portfolio, Lauren, what could a modern portfolio look like, for someone who wants to take a mini retirement, or somewhat travel, or even do a different career path without sacrificing their future?
Just as I explained, having those layers with liquidity, growth, and then adding some of your values, it gives you that flexibility around, how you access your money, when you need it, what kind of growth you're looking for, all the different exposures you're looking for in your portfolio. And of course, again, talking to ETFs, being very transparent, and there are a lot of tools to help you in creating that portfolio, and also being able to create it with small amounts, being able to use debit orders, being able to invest as and when you can. It's really about just starting as early as possible.
So, Lauren, many people have a fear, right? When it comes to, starting to invest, right? Or when it comes to investing. But then they want to also enjoy life at the same time, but also, they want to somewhat be responsible in doing their investments. Is it possible for them to start, looking at doing them both?
The answer is, it's all about balance. You don't have to choose between YOLO and saving and investing. You can choose both. You can do a bit of both, as long as you're intentional about it. Because it's really about building that habit. Again, it's about building the habit. You start small with your 50 Rand or your 100 Rand, and you build the habit. Every month you put that away. And consistency beats intensity. So being consistent versus putting away volumes at one point in time. Just don't fall into that trap about thinking I'll catch up, because later comes more responsibilities, and you don't want to get to that point where you're now at a point where you can't, invest for yourself. So really keep your future self in mind, and taking those small steps every day and being consistent is really what you need to do to find that balance between living now and being responsible.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously, Lauren, having covered now, this new way of, looking into retirement or long-term investment, right? Starting early. If someone is listening now, Lauren, and they are thinking, how can I start investing? What is the one small nugget that they could utilize today to make them start on a slow journey towards investing?
It's really finding like a one-stop shop similar to what Satrix offers on the Satrix Now platform, and using an account and being able to invest it as little as 50 Rand. And then setting up, a debit order, or when you have a little bit of extra money, putting that away. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You don't have to wait until you earn more. You just need to start. Even as a parent, you can register an account for a minor as well. And then you can also show them how money grows. So it's important to just take that step, register, invest your 50 Rand, see what it does, see what happens when the market goes up, see what happens when the market goes down. You have this time in the market to really pay your future self.
All right, cool. So Lauren, you are literally, the last expert, the last person that I'm getting to speak to, obviously wrapping up this awesome, Money School podcast, all about financial literacy. What's the last thing that you want to share just to wrap up this beautiful journey about money?
Karabo, for me, it's really to remain curious, to remain educating yourself, and to really be consistent. I mean, without consistency, your future self is not going to be very happy with yourself, so with you right now. So yeah, remain curious, be consistent, and really just start. Start with as little as you have, or start with as much as you have, but just start.
Beautiful. As you all say, just start. It doesn't matter where you start. It can be with 10 Rand. Just start. Lauren, thank you so much for sharing, the new way of looking into retirement or long-term investment, primarily starting early. I truly hope you, Lauren, had an amazing one, giving us nuggets of wisdom and knowledge on this investment journey. I know for sure that all the viewers and listeners have found this session informative and engaging. Thank you so much, Lauren. All the best.
Thanks, Karabo.
All right, man, that's it for today's episode. Obviously, this is the last episode of the Money School podcast. Today was literally extraordinary, second to none. I had in studio Maya Fischer-French speaking about the power of compound interest, and just wrapping up right now, speaking to Lauren Jacobs on the new way of looking into retirement or long-term investments. Starting early, listen, this has been an extraordinary podcast, man. The power of financial literacy, literally having on a platform, experts who can literally give us the knowledge that we need, that can help us set us up, to be able to thrive, whether we're starting out or we have already established businesses or we're thinking about the next move. This podcast was truly the place to be informed on the matters of money. Make money work for you, but also understanding the basics of money. Listen, keep this content on your phones, on your laptops. Always refer back to the power of the Satrix Money School podcast. This is where we make it happen, man. Teaching you guys, breaking the chains of not knowing how to talk about money, at home. It starts right here. I hope you guys really enjoyed it as much as I have. It's been a blessing. Please don't forget to hashtag Satrix Money School podcast. I'm your host. My name is Karabo. We are done, baby. Woo! Peace.